Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Monday's Wealth Creation Show. Today we're going to catch up with Jim. He's just back from
Just
Necker.
don't talk to me. Superstar in the making. You didn't expect us, did you?
I didn't actually. That was
See that? Look at that. Read that and weep. Necker Island.
yeah. Well, I thought it'd be good, especially for everybody that follows and things. We'll recap on just the other half year journey since we were in on last week, Jim, and just what you kind of took away for that and things. And I've lined up some other things to talk about. The 5 tips for planning a better financial future, because ultimately planning your financial future is what gets you to where you've just been, Jim. So yeah, let's kick off with a wee bit of a recap from your journey, and how the last week went.
I think it's a bit of a blur, to be honest. I'm still can't believe I was actually there.
Yeah, I know. I've seen your post saying like it's obviously the last week's just flew in, and it will have, and it will be a bit surreal.
Well, the last week didn't really flow in. It was actually really quite weird because I felt like I'd been there for ages, and I felt like it was just one big family, and I felt like I actually felt like I was in the right place. I genuinely thought that. I mean, Jamie Siminoff was there as well. Do you know who Jamie Siminoff is?
I don't.
He's the founder of Ring.com.
Oh, really? All right, okay.
Yeah. And he just sold his company to Amazon for over $1 billion. And I had no idea who Jamie was, because I didn't keep an eye on things like that. And I was having a wee chat with him. I says, "How'd you get on? And how's business and all the rest of it?" And he was going, "Yeah, I just sold my company." And he was talking about, I went, "Oh, right, what's your company?" He went, "Ring.com." And I went, "Is that the doorbells thing?" Yeah. But that was about it. That's the only conversation we had. So we talked about strategy, talked about what he never said anything about he sold. I realised later on he'd sold. I didn't know how much he'd sold it for. But yeah, we got on brilliantly. But this was towards the middle of the end of the week because most of these people actually know each other anyway, because this is a seasonal thing every year at the same time. Once you're in and you're on the list for Necker Island, your opportunity to get back there is you can get back. But if you leave that list, somebody else takes your place.
Yeah.
That's effectively it. And this is quite high. These are all high profile people. I mean, $1 billion, and lawyers and all the rest of it. And then you've got Richard Branson spending an hour the whole week. I was actually, this was just an off chance of he's away because he works all the time and he's away other places and he's away around the world. You can see that on social media and stuff like that. So when I actually thought about it, I thought, well, I'm not really particularly that bothered if he's no there, because surprise, surprise, why would he be?
Yeah.
But that was the week he decided to take a holiday.
Yeah, because when we spoke before you left, that wasn't your expectation to be sat with him and spending a lot of like time and discussions and things. No,
nothing like that at all. So he took a holiday, and if you know Richard Branson, well, clearly I do now. Tongue in cheek, remember?
Yeah.
But I got a feel for what he's like because we had a chat and stuff like that on numerous occasions. But if you know him, he gets bored easily. So he has to do something all the time. So he's always out doing a walk, or he's out doing a bike cycle. God, that bike cycle, flipping heck! It's like Jesus Christ. It's like on a Sunday morning and a Wednesday morning, he goes, "Hey, bike ride, who's coming?" And it's like 6:15. You leave and you go over to Virgin Gordo. And Virgin Gordo, where you're going to the Hogs Cafe up the top, it's like all the way up. God, it's the lowest gear possible. And, Richard's a bit like driving Miss Daisy. When you get up there, and he's just consistent, persistent, and all the rest of it in the lowest gear possible. But I tell you what, I had to get off my bike and push 60% of the way.
I mean, the incline, and especially on a bike. I mean, even like when you're hiking and things, an incline, it's difficult.
Oh God, it's like I could not believe how difficult and challenging that was to actually be able to do that. Definitely. So yeah, Richard, that was that's what it was. We were out there. I couldn't do Wednesday morning. My knees were goosed because I was out running and stuff like that as well. And you knew what happened on last Monday when I walked in his house. Oops. But yeah, during the week, speaking to other people were there. I mean, I tell you what, talk about elevating your game and seeing a bigger picture when you get around these people. So I was talking to Jamie when we were at the airport when we were going away, and Jamie's got door.com. Now, ring.com's obviously sold. He's got large.com. He's going to rebrand it as door.com. And it's going to be a real estate agency, and it's going to be like half the fees of what everybody else is in America. 1.5% he's going to be doing it. And I never realised, because if I picked up in the week, we would have probably had a chat, and this would have been a different story. This would have been me probably helping him out with door.com to some shape, some degree.
Yeah.
So he's got door.com, and I really saw the fire in him. And I know kind of on a smaller scale what price he's paid to get ring.com and the near bankruptcy he had in the very beginning for it and putting everything on the line. See that these traits. People are prepared to put everything on the line.
And these struggles and the challenges and everything that people go through to achieve their success. And it's like, we've heard your story and we've heard similar stories, and they all kind of mirror each other in the same kind of sequence of, you have to go through all this to get to the other side.
Absolutely. So, I kind of got a flavour for what he went through and all the rest of it. And I kind of thought, God, he's going to be broken at the end of this. And I went, are you excited with door.com? Fucking brilliant. Your beauty. He was like, your dancer. That's what he did. Yeah, your beauty. I'm ready to go. I'm wired and fired. And he's only 44. So I kind of thought, and I looked back at that and thought, God, that was me at that age. That was effectively me. That's the energy levels and the excitement I had at that age. And now, 12 years later, it's like, geez. So there's a lot to be said for getting around the right people to reinvigorate and reignite your enthusiasm and not keep around the same people and more or less are potentially just pulling your energy all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting you said, and I picked up, like, obviously you said you were there and you felt like you felt like you were meant to be there and you didn't feel out of place. And a lot of people would walk into that situation and sit in that company and feel really out of place and really the imposter syndrome type thing. How am I here sitting with these kind of people? So, I mean, do you think if somebody was to feel like that and be in that position, why do they still feel like that when they're sat around a table with people like Richard Branson and things? Do you know this?
What do you mean feel? What position?
Well, if they've been able to get to where you were and sat around the same table as these people, but feel out of place, whereas you said you felt totally like you were meant to be there and in place, then how do you think that is? If people have become successful but still feel like they are out of place, do you think it is just imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, probably they've no built their mental toughness.
Yeah.
A lot to do as well as they don't have full belief in themselves, I suppose.
Yeah.
They don't have full belief in themselves. They don't actually believe they can actually achieve so much in terms of what they're doing. And that for me tells you kind of everything in terms of what should be going on. I think that's the most important thing out of this is understanding you as a person, understanding who you are, what you're capable of, and what you need to do in order to achieve what you want to achieve. Yeah. Once you understand that and you have full confidence that this is going to happen for you, you're probably around about. But remember, this takes years and years of education in your brain, because we all start out at different levels. We all start out. Some people come from broken families. They never think they'll aspire to anything, then go to meteoric success. Some people actually start, with really high success with parents that were really successful in what they're doing, and then it undermines what they are because they think they should be that type of person, and they go on with this sense of less of a worth, I suppose. And then that's why they don't aspire to anything greater. and that's why they end up like being on drugs and all the rest of it, and
Yeah, go down
alcoholics and
different
stuff
paths,
like that. Because they can't cope with the success of their parents that have come before them. So it's not a discriminatory thing. It's not, you can't determine where you're going to be just by the hand that you've been dealt in life. It's a lot to do with how you approach things and how you move on from that and how you see yourself. That's it, ultimately.
Yeah.
I didn't have any fandom or anything like that. When I was about Richard and I was about Jamie and I was about the other people as well, there was no fandom. There was no like, I'm out of place. It was like, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was perfectly normal. For other people, it was, I never wanted to get a selfie with Richard. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't in my thoughts at all. I wasn't interested at all until everybody on social media started saying, when are you going to get a selfie? When are you going to get a selfie? And it's like,
that
that's not
expectation.
my thing. And I was like, Richard, go and give me a selfie, because folk are blooming greeting about it on social media. That's sort of, and I appreciate that. But I'm like that as well when it comes to awards. It's like, yay, it's another award. Put it on the shelf or stick it in the cupboard and let's move on and do something, be better at what we do again. Because it's not the actual award. It's important. It's the journey and what you do to get there. It's the most important thing, because it will allow you to then go to the next level and what you want to do. And this comes down to the subject that we're talking about now, which is literally just planning a better financial future. This is what this is all about, ultimately, when it comes down to it.
And I think if you start out and you get the right mentors and the right people who are educating you correctly, you've got the right advice, you start planning a really good financial future, and you go through that whole process, and you have took the risks and analyze. We talk about risk management and things as well. When you get to that place, like where you've just been, Jim, and where you are in your life, then you will think to yourself, I mean, this is where I should be now, because you've went through that. Whereas maybe other people don't kind of go through that whole process, and that's where they then start to feel like, I shouldn't be here, and I'm not worthy of being here. And then that's when, like you say, people don't really know or appreciate their actual real worth. But yeah, we're going to talk about better financial planning today.
I feel sorry for the people on TikTok, because I'm going through problems with my phone now, and they've never heard anything what we just heard now, because I've just managed to connect right now. So none of the people on TikTok have heard about the fact that meeting Richard Branson, Jamie Siminoff of Ring.com, selling it for $1 billion to Amazon and stuff like that, and getting around all these people. So apologies. But you can watch it. For the people on TikTok, you can watch it on the catch up.
And it's on that, because that's a shame, because it was a good intro to what we're actually going to talk about today. And when we're thinking about the future, few things are more important than sound financial planning. And our wealth and our financial situation impact many aspects of our life. And effective financial planning enables you to do what we want to do in our lives and gives us that long-term control. And ultimately, we talk a lot about giving you time back. Time's the most important thing. And some off-the-shelf products and things and one-size-fits-all approaches to financial planning aren't unlikely to maximise the assets or create the best foundations to maximise them for the future for every person, because everybody's circumstances and everybody's personal circumstances are different. And like you say, Jim, everybody starts at different stages in their journey. So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
This is quite an interesting one. I'm going to talk about this at the end of this. I had a conversation with Richard Branson about this, about financial future and about planning for your future and about all the rest of it. And particularly, he was more interested in how I wanted to live till 150-year-old. He was telling me
that's went up, is it not?
Yeah, he was telling. I know 150 has got to be the benchmark now, because I'll probably hit 120 and I'll quid in. And why I want to do that. And the whole concept of that. So he was quite actually intrigued about why that is. I know what he's doing, and I'm not going to discuss it. He takes certain drugs and all the rest of it to help him, not, by the way, pharmaceutical drugs, no anything else, but to help him, he takes certain types of things actually to prolong who he is, and prevention rather than cure.
Right.
to anything like cancer or anything like that. So he's got access to all that, and he was talking to me about that as well. But interestingly enough, you know, we had this conversation about living longer, and he said something really profound to me.
What was that?
We'll talk about it in a wee while. Let's talk
Right.
about, you know, bring that back to me. So I'll discuss it in a wee while and why it's so relevant. This is quite interesting. This is quite interesting as well. When you look at some of the figures, so PensionBee, I was on here, and I was looking on PensionBee, and they had done a sample research out of 200,000 customers, and out of 200,000 customers, they found that the average pension pot size in the UK for their 200,000 customers is £17,379. I'll say that again. £17,379. What the hell are you going to retire on? Nothing.
Nothing.
You know, in Scotland, it's 15,194, the average pension pot size, not the pension per year, the average pension pot size.
Yeah, so that's it. That's overall.
The average state pension is £204 a week, which is 10,600 a year. Now, where does that leave everybody else? Think about that. Think about that for a minute, if anybody's tuning in and anybody's listening to this. Think about that. Where are you in relation to this? Where is your pension pot? What size is it? What proportion of it will contribute to your existing income that you have to survive on right now when you actually finally retire? What is there going to be the state pension that's going to contribute to that as well? Because I know it's like £204 a week. Christ almighty, that's the utility bills.
Yeah, I know.
going at this point and going at this case, council tax and utility bills, that's it. You're done almost.
Yeah, and people my age in their 30s, I mean, by the time we get there, there won't even be a state pension.
No. So it's quite interesting, you know, how we discuss that. And this is why we talk about how it's so important about planning for a better financial future.
Yeah.
That goes back to remember what I said about what Richard said to me at the end. So this is the most important thing we're going to talk about, and why it applies, because it was similar for me. So when I first started out, I was stony broke. I had nothing, homeless and unemployed. At that point, I had nothing to my name at all. I was literally probably in debt. And what I mean by in debt, in other words, whatever I had, I probably had more debt for that at that time. So that's where I first started out. So how is it possible that, you know, how is it, what did I do on my journey? And remember, success leaves clues. So what did I do on my journey to get to the point of multimillionaire? You know, you've got to think about it like that. I mean, how is that possible?
No.
I mean, even I can't believe that in myself, but it's a fact. I don't feel that way either, to be honest. Maybe most people see differently, and they'd see a different thing of that, but it's nothing different for me at all. So I think more than likely, I expected it to happen, but I expected it to happen, and I had belief in it happening because of a conditioned my mind, and I conditioned my I basically planted my goals in stone.
Yeah.
What I want to achieve, but you know, your plans are in sand, because at some point in time the sea will wash in and your plans will be washed away, and then you'll just have to reset them again to achieve your ultimate goals. Now remember, this is a point where I said, when I retire, I want to be a millionaire. But I actually forgot to say that when I retire at 65, I want to be a millionaire.
And it was, so, were you 38?
38. It's like, oh, wait, okay, wait a minute. So I actually, if I had said 65, I think it would have been a different picture. I don't think we would be talking here right now. I don't think I'd be doing this. But I forgot to put an age on it. I just said, you know, I did say to everybody, I used to say to everybody, I've not got a pension. And if I'm not a millionaire by the time I retire, remember, I didn't say the date. By the time I retire, I deserve everything I get. All the unsuccess, you know, all the negative point, you know, if I've not got a penny to my name, it's my own bloody fault. And so because I knew where I was going, I knew what I wanted to achieve. So you can see it like that. I didn't actually put a date on it then. I didn't put an age on it. So I didn't pre-program myself to think it was 65. So there was no surprise when I did it 38. I never knew at the time, remember, I only worked this out last year.
Yeah.
That when I retired at 38 and I worked it out last year, what my net worth was, net worth, not what property I have. It's net worth is assets minus all your debt.
Yeah.
I didn't realize at that time when I retired at 38, I was a millionaire at that point. I still didn't know until last year, until I did that exercise just to, because it was for the show. It was for the show. That's the only reason I did it. Other than that, I just thought, well, it's just what I do. I just keep doing it. So it was no surprise then that 18, 19 years later, I am where I am right now because of the compounding of the wealth over a period of time. I could have sat and done nothing. It's like people talk about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about Trump, about taking all the money he's lost. He's the money he got from his dad, if he put into a Standards and Poor's fund, he probably would have made more money than what he made out of what he's doing right now. But what you don't realise right now, that on paper it seems like he would have, he would be more with Standard and Poor's and just leaving it alone. But in real terms, he probably is a lot more wealthy because there's a brand called Trump as well, which isn't quantified. It's intangible and it's worth something.
And it will be worth a hell of a lot. And that's where, and the first thing we're going to talk about is creating a cash flow plan. And in that we talk about, and it's wealth, and wealth does not always necessarily translate itself into an abundance, say surplus or disposable cash. For example, you may just be asset rich, whether that's in property and tangible assets, or like you say, a brand, Jim, like Trump and things. I mean, that's asset rich as well, because I mean, could you even really? I don't think they would actually put a value on Trump as a brand, because it's. I mean, it would be quite a lot.
It'd be over $1 billion.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Yeah, he's got the hotels, he's got the golf courses, he's got all these different things. So that brand itself, and a quantification is value, is probably over $1 billion.
Yeah, and when you set out, Jim, your journey and your buy-to-let portfolio and things, that's what you were doing. You were creating a cash flow plan, and at times you were, and we've spoke about this, like money was maybe less readily available, and that might have resulted in short to medium or long-term financial pressures and things in the beginning, which can then put a strain on your budgets and your aspirations and things. But that's all part of that journey and achieving your success. So
I don't particularly think it ever did, because from a very early time in my journey, when I went back to college to study, especially when I was in financial, and financial record keeping was the first. Financial record keeping, FRK, financial record keeping. Yeah, FRK was the first thing. So you got 1, 2, and 3. They were just modules. So, and I sat them in my national certificate. And when I started to do them, it was basic bookkeeping. And at that time, I'd failed miserably at school and never even got a mention. So when I started to do them, it started to, I never came back on anything. I just started from scratch and started again. But when I began to realize that budget and cash flow and all the rest of it, the penny started to drop a bit about managing my cash, because we had to be really frugal in terms of what we're doing.
Yeah.
I wanted to generate as much cash as possible because I realized the importance at that time. Cash flow is king, not cash is king. Cash is trash, because cash is just basically money in your pocket. Unless it's flowing in and it's doing something and it's going in one direction or the other, cash is no good to you at all.
Yeah.
So for me, cash flow was the most important thing, because it was ultimate survival every single month, especially when I was at college. Because we had taken on a mortgage as well. And at that time, interest rates had gone up to 15% on your mortgages. Now that's eye-watering. You think 5% is difficult. 15% is like, wow.
Yeah.
15% interest rates we were on. So we had to scrape every single penny out of everything. So I used to, at that time, I deliberately looked at things, and see, when you're put under pressure, you'll either fold and just give up, or you'll bury your head in your sand, or you'll go, right, what do I need to do to alleviate my position every single month? And that's what I did. I actually looked at, right, we've got a car payment going out every month. That's £227. It probably was, or thereabouts. We've got a mortgage going out every single month. That's £300.
Yeah.
We've got that going out every single month. That's that amount. We've got that going out every single. So I did a budget, a spreadsheet of what goes out, what comes in, and what goes out. Now, at that time, it was difficult to quantify, but I had a lot of bank records. So it was easy for me to take the bank records and put, what am I spending every single month? What's all the standing orders? And then I was able to put in amounts for the cash that we're outlaying. In other words, I'd taken withdrawals at the bank, and I was able to work out roughly how much were the withdrawals and what they were for. So I was able to put them in the right category. Now, if you know me very well, you'll realize that my clothing budget is literally zero. I will wear something till it falls off my back.
How long you had that shirt?
Oh, I don't know. I think Elaine gave me it to. No, honestly, Elaine gave me it for Christmas, but I've worn it all the time. I like it.
It's not that one. It's the other one that you wear that you've had for quite a long time.
There's another one as well. Yeah. Okay. But there's even ones I've had for about 10 years and I still wear them now. I couldn't care less what anybody else thinks. It just looks okay and it does the job. Yeah. I'm no bothered. And as does, black trousers, 10 quid a pair. I'm not a big clothes person. I don't see the value in it at all unless you're trying to impress somebody. It's like, as long as I'm comfortable with what I am, that's fine with me. The key here as well, interestingly enough, there was, for most of these people out in Neckar, there wasn't a brand in sight.
Yeah. And I think you tend to find that people that are successful and wealthy aren't really consumed in this whole brand-orientated society.
The only people that were like that, and they're salt of the earth, David and Lee. Dave and Lee are absolutely brilliant. They have Lon Parney, which is an Italian fashion brand. Right. Lon Parney. So they dress people like Macklemore.
Right.
So Macklemore, they also dress a lot of the rappers in the US as well with their Schwarzkopf crystal jackets and everything like that, and all the rest of the design. They also have another brand which is Clear Crystal, which they do all the jewellery, Christmas crackers, 20,000 a year, which incidentally Richard and his wife have actually ordered for everybody. For this year. So if you're wanting Clear Crystal Christmas crackers now with the jewellery, you better get in there now because Richard is about to buy everything that they've got in terms of their stock for all them and their employees and friends and family and all the rest of it. So they were brilliant. They were absolutely fantastic. But two regular guys, nothing special about them at all. I mean, there is, because they're unique. If you're round about them, you know when you know. You know they've just got it. They're people you want to gravitate to, and I'm not surprised that people like Macklemore, they've actually just employed Beyonce's creative designer.
Right.
So they've actually poached them off of Beyonce. So they now have employed her creative designer for Beyonce. So Lee and Dave are absolutely fantastic in terms of what they do. But there wasn't a brand in sight apart from that. But that's their business. I was actually, this was a weird one. I was like, why are you not putting loads of content on social media about you being out here at Neckar Island and with Richard? Because they don't have any real social media presence at all. And I was like, you're off your head.
That's not a trick there, then.
I'm missing a trick completely. And I says, see what level you're at now. If you go into social media and you make sure you use that properly, you could elevate yourself way beyond where you are right now. And they're like, oh, I cannot believe that. But see the information that someone else has. Now, somebody like me, when you look at a brand like that, it's like you go, well, what could I tell them? Clearly, social media.
Yeah.
I was same with Jamie. I was talking to Jamie about it. It says, your story needs to be told. He went, well, I've told it on How I Made It or something like that in America. I looked at How I Made It and it's got 500,000 followers. I'm like, really? And I'm like, because I'm going on, you should be on Steve Bartlett's, Diary of a CEO with 2 million followers.
Yeah.
He was going, oh, but I've told it once. Who else wants to hear it? And I'm like, God almighty, everybody around the world wants to see a rags to riches. You know,
as soon as you heard that it was the guy that created Ring, I mean, Ring doorbells, I've got one. I expect the majority of people have got one. You would want to hear that story. I would like to hear that story.
Oh my God! And how all the sharks, when he went on Shark Tank in America, every single one of them dismissed him and says, "You're off your head. You're in Cloud Cuckoo land." But he had full belief in himself. Now, how on earth does he think no one really wants to hear that story? Do you know why? Because he just expected it. It's exactly the same as me. The only reason, you know, I don't really want to tell these stories, but I realise that my children and my grandchildren and everything like that might benefit from what I'm telling and what we're discussing right now. This was my full focus on the Wealth Creation Show for my children, my grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren are not even born yet. And the fact that they can learn this from someone that they know and trust at the same time. Yeah. So that was the point. And this is why we do this every single week.
Yeah, and that's what we spoke about, obviously creating cash flow and a cash flow plan, and to talk about your family and why you do this, Jim, brings us really on nicely to the next point, and it's really ensuring your family is looked after, and that is the next point apart, and an important part for most people of their financial planning for the future. And as the old adage goes, and you can't take it with you when you die, and the fact of the matter is that usually people don't want to. I mean, what are they going to do? And like you say, Jim, you don't want to have regrets on your deathbed, and you want to be able to get to that point and know that everything that you've created is set up and being passed on to your next generation.
Yeah. What your children want from you right now at this point in time is for you to actually, if you're going to help them, don't help them when you're ready to pop your clogs. You're too late. Help them now. You need to do something with them now. You need to help them now. Now, there's a trade-off here. There's a trade-off. If I help them too much, will it become complacent? Will they not learn any lessons out of it? And I think you've just got to trust them. You've got to trust the savvy out of them and understand it's like, you know, they're their own people. They'll make their own decisions, whether you like it or not. And when you go and if you leave everything to them, they're more than likely to spend all that in a reckless way than they are right now when they're actually got a mortgage to pay and bills to pay and stuff like that. You know, that's probably why it's more important to them now if you're going to leave them anything. But could you imagine, this is the classic where I thought to myself, could you imagine lying on your deathbed? You know, when you're lying there and your family round about you and think to yourself, well, you're just going to have to fend for yourself, guys.
Yeah.
Because I've left nothing.
I know.
I've left nothing to your wife, to your children, to your great-grandchildren, no one. You've left them nothing. You've pissed it all up against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that would really hit home. And at a point in life where, well, it's too late. What are you going to do about it now?
Yeah, you've had it. You've gassed it. This is why I go back to talking about when we talked about in the beginning, when we talked about the average pension being the average pension pot in the UK being 17,000.
Yeah.
Now you can get other data that says it's 30,000, but it's like 30,000. What are you going to do with that? Most people, that's the average earnings for 1 year.
I know,
and that's somebody's pension.
And you think about project that on to obviously further down the line when actual retirement age, it's just you're never going to be able to live on that. Pensions is actually the next thing I'm going to ask you about, Jim. But I just wanted to talk about this, obviously, ensuring your family is looked after in the future and things. And there arguably is no better feeling than knowing that what you're building towards is a sound financial future that will protect the ones that mean the most to you and help them achieve their dreams. And like you say, maybe not just when you are away, when you're here now as well, and you could help them financially to be successful in their own right.
Yeah.
And then, but then as well, Jim, and I think it was last year we discovered about trusts and things and how to set things up in a trust to then pass on to the generations ahead. Remember that was something that you explored last year.
You've also got the SARS pensions. Now you can invite a lot of your family members if you're in charge of a company, by the way, and they're directors as well. You can invite them into your SARS pension where you can have up to about Kevin Whelan did it with us. I think it's up to about 11 or 12 people.
That was that, yeah.
And it's on one of these shows previously. but it's allowed 11 or 12 people. So when you pop your clogs, that pension passes on to them as well automatically, and isn't it part of your inheritance tax. So there's another bonus to that. And then it allows them to invest in what they need to invest in and use the staff pension to the best of its ability, rather than relying on just somebody else to try and do it for you. Now, for me, my pension is just a straightforward UK equities and Standard Life. And, you know, more than likely, it is just a mechanism to make sure I don't pay higher rate tax on my contributions and make sure I get it all back by contributing it into my pension.
Because you could offset it by putting it in,
Yeah, so I offset it in, and that brings it down to the lower rate tax threshold at maximum level for both Elaine and I. And that's all we need. We don't need anything earth-shattering. We don't need tens, millions of pounds of money every single year to survive on. And I don't mean about survive, but I'm just talking about need rather than want. And the wants can come as the one-offs, like the Necker Island and stuff like that, and doing what we want to do with that. But it's more to leave something for anybody else that comes after you. Because if you die tomorrow, what will that leave? What will that leave everybody you've left behind? If you die tomorrow, will anybody survive? Imagine if the whole thing is your ability is everything, your whole family, your children, your wife, or your husband, or your partner, or whoever that is. If you go and you're the only person earning, does that mean they've got nothing now?
So their survival and their way of living is completely dependent on your ability to perform.
Yeah. That's when you think about it all the time, and that's what drove me in the first instance, is, you know, it's my ability to perform. Everything's reliant on. So I need to make sure I've got something left for them if anything happens. And I've always, you know, said to Elaine, it's like, never sell the houses, because the houses will always make the money regardless. Never sell the houses, because they're all making money. Yeah, you can get rid of the cars and, you know, anything else I've got. It's irrelevant. It maybe just costs money every single month. Just punt it. Don't sell the houses, because they're earning the money. They're bringing a cash flow every single month. So we've got looking after your family. We've got creating a cash flow plan. You know, these are the two main things that you should be driving towards to do. Now, when I first started out in the beginning, I just brought everything right down to the bare bones. So in other words, what do I need to survive on? It wasn't what I need to live on, it's what I need to survive on. Survive's a lot less. That's how I did it. So I looked at what I need to survive on. Okay, we need to definitely pay that mortgage, because we've got no choice with that. We need to do this, we need to do that. Can I move that mortgage out to a better rate, or can I move the distance? Can I move it longer in terms of the amount of time? Because my mortgage is only like, now my mortgage is, I don't really have, because it's offset now. So I'm really making a 7% return on my money, because I've got an offset mortgage now, so I don't do it. But I've still got the mortgage, because I can still make more money on the mortgage money. So why would I want to then why would I want to pay off the mortgage with the money I could make more money with? So until that point comes, that's the only reason I would ever pay off my mortgage. What would be the point? And everybody's, oh, you've got to pay off your mortgage, got to pay off your mortgage, got to pay off your mortgage, got to pay off your mortgage. And that's great for people that just want to follow the 40-year plan. In other words, you go to work at 16, you retire at 65 or 66 now. And that's the 50-year plan. So if you want to follow the 50-year plan, good luck to you. You'll just get the same as what everybody else has got, which is basically working for the rest of your life because you can't afford to retire, dying before you get to retirement age, or not, or retiring on 2/3 or even less of what you couldn't afford to live on in the first place. That's effectively what you've got coming, whether you like it or not. This is why you have to plan for your future. This is why you have to make sure that you're investing in your future and your family's future and the generations to come. If you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And they're just going to learn exactly what you're doing, and the rest of your family, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and most selfish people, and I will say selfish people, and I'll call it what it is, most selfish people will go, well, they could, you know, they'll get a job and they'll look after themselves. It's not up to me to look after these people.
Well, it is, because you brought them into the world. But
you've nailed it, isn't it? You're the person that started it. You're the person that started it. If you didn't want to start it, you shouldn't have had them.
There has to be that level of responsibility and things towards your children. You brought them into the world. to ensure that they're going to be all right for the duration. And we speak about the trust accounts and things and wills and all the rest of it. Jim, just quickly before we move on to pensions, you mentioned about the SAS, and that was with Kev Whelan. Now it's in the
Kevin
playlist.
Whelan, yeah.
Kevin Whelan. It's in the playlist for the Wealth Creation Show. But just to clarify, so does that mean, so if you say, for instance, you've got a property portfolio and you have that in a limited company and running through a limited company, does that mean your children will need to be as directors of, on that limited company in order to be able
Watch
to
the show.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
more. There's definite
We've got more
clarity
to it than that.
from Kevin because he's a specialist in that type of pension format. So there's full clarity there, and watching that show from Kevin Whelan about SAS pension.
Okay.
You can do
Well,
with it.
and that's because, and he's obviously an expertise. He's got expertise in that, and he is the expert to listen to. So, and that's one of the points that we're going to go into as well, is seeking professional advice for the right people. But next point for me is prioritising your pension, Jim, and you've already just started a wee bit on that at the intro when you were talking about what actually is going to be state pensions or your normal pension amount now, and it's
Do you know,
very.
when I was working with my dad, actually, that must have been about 16 years old. I remember my father used to talk to me about my pension, and I just used to go, yawn fest.
I think it wasn't. It
You know,
didn't
it's
apply.
like,
That doesn't apply to me.
Christ almighty, why am I need to bother about a pension now? It's 50 years away. There's the plan I'm following, remember? It's 50 years away. I'm 16, 66, 65. It's 50 years before I get to that. Why do I really need to bother about it now? But my father never really explained it to me that well. And the fact that you have to build up, because he never sat me down and goes,
Yeah.
listen, you idiot. Listen, you idiot. When I used to go, pensions, I don't want to know anything about them at all. And so he should have taken a hold of me and says, for God's sake, listen. But that's what he should have done. So this is the lesson I've learned out as well. And that's why I beat this drum every single time for your children.
Yeah.
You should have a pension for your children right now. You get huge tax advantage from the UK government for a pension for children right now. You get up to the basic rate threshold, which means you could put anything every year into your child's pension, a contribution from granny and granddad, a contribution from members of the family, contributions from you as well, your mum and dad, and the siblings as well. They can put all into this child's pension or grandchild's pension, and they will get the uplift in the basic rate tax. So up to 2,880 goes in, and the government tops it up to 3,600 every year. So they add on that 20% uplift in terms of the extra and the tax, even though the child's not earning, because the money is coming from people who have had it taxed.
Yeah.
But because there's a connection with spouse and family and all the rest of it, and your children, then that's why they allow you to do that, to put in for your children. They're obviously trying to encourage people to do that, but they don't promote it that well, and they don't tell anybody about it. But the key is to take that pension out. Now, I'll be honest. My kids' pensions are around about 90 grand each in their pension pot. Now, we've just discussed the other now. In Scotland, it's 15 grand.
Is it not?
They're 6 times that, and they're, Tony's only 30.
In their 20s, yeah. Tony's just turned 30, yeah.
So when you think about it like that, and that's because I've put money in over the years. Now, we've stuck to a plan. It was £22 for every month for Ben, for Scott. It was £33 for Ben. This is because of the age, to get them all to catch up at the same time. Yeah. And it was £77 a month for Tony. Now, Tony works, Ben works, and Scott works, but we still put that money in. And we tell them to top up theirs. And plus the fact is they take their money and they either invest it or save it and put it in, what they need to do. They are not people who spend like the world's ending tomorrow.
No.
Why do you think they learned that habit? How do you think they learned that habit?
You taught them it.
Well, incidentally, I never sat them down and taught them it.
No, but I think
they just saw me doing that.
Yeah, I was just going to say they learn for what you've done.
Here's another key to your children's success. You are a mirror for your child.
Yeah.
So what you do is what your child will do exactly the same.
Yeah, lead by
So
example.
if you do something really positive and you save and they see you saving, if they see you not going out and running and buying that car and getting loads and loads of credit for something and not explaining, maybe it's a good tax deduction. Electric vehicles are fully tax deductible. Maybe that's the case, and that's why you would explain to them, yeah, we've got this car. It's a lot of money, a lot more than the usual, but it's a really good tax deduction. It's 100% allowance against the first year, plus the fact I think you're actually allowed other tax deductions even after that. And that's only if you're leasing it. Imagine that, if you're leasing an electric car. You get the full tax deduction amount of the car, but you also get the tax deduction in the lease payments as well.
Yeah.
You don't own it. How's that? So there's a huge advantage sometimes to do that, but look into that yourself. And that's why you'd explain it to your children. So I've done a lot of explaining over the years about why I do certain things. I'm not sat them down and going, look, here's a map and here's a graph. I've just dropped it in now and again, and they go yawn fest. But the reality is, they go away and it sticks in there.
They've retained it, yeah.
Yeah, it sticks in there. What does he know? What does he know? He's just my dad. I've seen him roll in the door, drunk as a skunk, crawling to the toilet, being sick and stuff like that. All these stupid things, pushing his pals up the high street in a trolley and, all these different things. And familiarity breeds contempt. Hence the reason why your children really don't listen to you. But they do. They just don't let you know.
Yeah, it's quite, and definitely, and like I say, leading by example is definitely something that,
But people don't, everybody out there, majority of people out there don't realise that you are a mirror for your child. So whatever you do is what your child will end up doing. So if you're doing drugs, if you're an alcoholic, if you're taking cocaine, or you're doing all these different things, or if you're lying continuously, if you're hitting your partner and all the rest of it, guess what they're going to do when they grow up?
They're going to see it as normal and acceptable.
They think that's normal. They think that's the norm. They think that's acceptable. They think, even though they sit and say to themselves, I'll never do that, often it happens.
Yeah.
The risk is higher of that person being the same as their mother and father or the environment they grow up in. The risk is a lot higher of them ending up being like that. So you are a mirror for your child right now. So what example are you setting for them? And that's why I talk about the pension so much, about getting the right, doing it now, just dropping the hint, but doing it for them. Because if they see you doing that for them, I mean, there's no doubt my kids are going to look at it and go, flipping heck, I've got all that. It's like what he's done, because he's not put that much into it, but it's compounded over the years. And then do you think that way that's going to compound? For somebody like Tony's 30, so 65 is the normal. So 35 years of compounding in 90 grand. That's a lot of money. That's going to be way beyond what the average pension is when Tony retires. So she's not going to be an average person or average income. And we've got other things we want to talk about when we come to pension. I could drill right down and say what you need to retire on and what you actually get, and that might be another show, another time.
We could do.
If you retire at this amount, this is what this is what you'll expect to get. If you retire at that amount, this is what you'll expect to get. So we'll maybe talk about that in another show.
We could actually probably do several shows on pensions, to be honest, because there's so much involved in it and benefits and things. And
yet people switch off straight away when you talk about pensions.
Yeah, and like you say, Jim, it's important to live in the here and the now, but equally it's crucial to plan for the next phase of your life, and prioritising contributions to your pension during your working life and things can ensure that when you do retire, it can be a lot less unrestrictive, and you'll be living with like you say, above the average salary or well above in some cases.
Okay. You do it right. So let me just, before we leave that subject, because I know when you talk about risk management, the key here is, if you're hoping that your employer's pension is going to save you when you retire, you're completely mistaken.
No,
it's not, because you will be where everybody else is at the same time. So therefore, inflation and costs will all move up to that earning potential for everybody else, because you'll all be retiring on the same type of pension, because you're all getting forced to put the same amount of money in by the government. You have to do a side hustle, or you have to do additional voluntary contributions to your pension if that's what you want to do. You have to do something else outside of this.
Yeah.
Because you're just getting the same as everybody else when you retire. So your company pension isn't going to save you, because everybody else is going to have the same spending level.
The way I look at it really is, I think, like you say, Jim, get yourself a side hustle set up, have a personal pension that you do, work out what the contributions are right for you, like you say, at the right level. And I think look at your workplace pension as a bit of a bonus when it comes. I think, in my mind, that's
kind of how I looked at it. It's like
Yeah.
when I look back some of my workplaces, I think, oh, I've got 18 grand to
everybody, yeah,
transfer.
I've got that,
Oh,
yeah.
I've got 10 grand for there. Oh, I've got 5 grand for there. Oh, brilliant. Just chuck
But
that in.
they're
Pop.
more things that you're going to be able to live on.
Yeah. And the next minute, I've got 200 grand. It's like, what? Where the hell did I get that for? That's weird, eh? It's like money for nothing. But that's effectively what you've got to look at it like. You've got to just put that away, and it really is planning for the future and making sure you're going to be in a better position. Plus, the fact is that is in a personal pension. So if I pop my clogs, it automatically goes to Elaine.
Mm-hmm.
If that was in all our personal pensions now, but if that was in what we call a defined benefit pension, which in other words means you get 2/3 of your salary when you retire, that generally is the NHS, public service, and all the rest of it. If you pop your clogs, they've maybe got a death benefit, but you need to check, because if you pop your clogs and that happens, you'll maybe only get 50% of your partner's pension.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that was the same with Diageo. It was we were going to get. I would get 50% of Elaine's pension, and yet Elaine's pension is something like 160 grand. And I was like, cash it now, get it transferred to. Honestly, get it transferred. There's no point in letting it sit there, because if anything happens to Elaine, I get 2/3 of that, and then when I die, there's nothing left. It disappears.
Mm-hmm.
So if that 160 grand that Elaine's got is now in a personal pension. We're not caring if it doesn't go up in value, or if it just keeps with inflation. The reality is we've got full control of that now. So the both of us, if something happens to us, that goes straight to the children. 160 grand. That would never have happened if we'd left it with Diageo.
Yeah, and a lot of people won't know that.
And that's why it's doing. So, okay, so they've got to work out and all the rest of it. What, this is risk, remember, as well. When we tried to transfer that, we had to go through a process and pay £3,000 to get somebody to tell us that we're in a position that we can transfer our pension. Because in defined benefit contribution pensions, what happens is the government forces you to get an independent consultant to review your situation to see if they would recommend it's okay for you to transfer it. And if they don't recommend, you'll not get to transfer it. Or they'll let you transfer it, but it's at your own bequest, so there's no comeback to them. But the government on most occasions won't let you transfer pensions now. So all this thing about you could run out and buy a Lamborghini with your pension tomorrow, isn't it true?
Yeah.
What George Osborne did. That's not true. That was all the safeguards were put in place to stop that. Because obviously, clearly, that's completely irresponsible. You spend the whole lot on a Lamborghini, you go and buy it, and you've got nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
Why would the government entice you to do that? No, they wouldn't.
No.
So that's why there's mechanisms in place to stop you doing that.
Yeah,
but then that comes to risk.
I was just going to say, and that brings us on nicely to risk management. And risk management, in some regards, does kind of mirror or dovetail with looking at cash flow and things in your cash flow. And life can be quite unpredictable, and not everything is controllable. So just look at the effect of what the pandemic had on the recent steep increase in household energy prices and things as well. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. So you need to really have that risk management strategy in place and be prepared for the unexpected in the future. And having a solid plan to counter any unknown risks will offer you both like that peace of mind, and it will also give you obviously an effective strategy to mitigate any financial.
So let's talk about then, before we get to seek professional advice, because that's the last one, and I'll just say that's when I'm going to tell you what Richard Branson told me.
So I've got it noted next.
We're going to seek professional advice. I'll tell you what Richard Branson told me last week when I'm about living longer, and how to do that. It's like a wee eye opener. It's like, but okay. We'll talk about that and seek professional advice. But risk management is ultimately all about assessing, if you do it now, in terms of cash flow and stuff like that. If you commit to something, what's the risks? Now, here's the classic risk management strategy here. When I see two couples earning, they immediately go to themselves, let's run out and buy a massive house. Because we've now got a mortgage approval for 500,000.
Yeah.
Let's get something at 500,000. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's only two of you. Why do you need a house at 500,000 if there's only two of you?
But that's something that I've had to we've had that conversation. And I get it now. I get it now. I do.
I'll be honest, Richard. The best thing you could ever done is when you lifted the phone to me and said, "Do you think I should buy the one across the road? Yeah. It's a far bigger house." And I immediately, we went through this process, the risk management process. Yeah. And the risk management process to you at that time was, what happens if something happens to either one of you? Your ability to perform is compromised. In other words, you lose your job. You lose your license because of something, it could have been an accident. You're then left with the fact that the blame's on you, and you end up losing your license because of points. And that means your license is key to that. So there's all these external factors that you have to assess in risk management. It might happen, and then you have to assess, is it worth taking the risk that if that did happen, and the likelihood that it happened, remember, I mean, it's because, a bolt of lightning coming from the sky is not going to happen, but that's a risk management, isn't it? But then you assess, it's like, nobody's really been hit with a bolt of lightning ever, I know. So that wouldn't be in the sphere of anything in terms of, but it is a risk management. What would happen if I decided to walk to work every single day? I could get run over at some point in time. I could get hit by someone in a car crossing the road. What would happen if I decided to go a wee bit faster every day in the car? What would happen if I decided to, play my mobile at the same time in the car? Where's the risk of crashing into someone else in front of you, and the fact that you might be impaired mentally because you have brain damage? All these different things could be based on your ability to perform, and therefore it could compromise your income. And then what happens if your income's compromised? That is risk management. That's why when you get critical illness cover from an insurer and you're older, they charge you more because you're more likely to come up with an ailment. It's, like cancer or dementia or anything that's associated with getting older. Dodgy knees. Well, look at Bupa, private healthcare. When you're younger, really cheap. When you get older, it's a lot more to get Bupa every single year. Because the likelihood is you use it more because maybe you've got to go in for private operations on maybe your knees, maybe your hips go, maybe anything happens, all these different things. That's why they do risk management. And you should do the same thing. You should assess where you are right now. So when I go in to see a lot of couples and they go, yeah, look at that bigger house, when they're selling their house, I often say to them, I do the risk management with them. Goes, okay, so that happens. Would you want to go back to college in the future? Absolutely. Because I pick up in the conversation, they go, and maybe in the future I'll be able to go back to college and all the rest of it. Whoa, you're not going back to college if you're buying a bigger house.
No.
Because you're committed to these costs. And then often, on some occasions, I'll get them saying, we're not going to sell the house, we're going to stay where we are.
Yeah.
I did that recently along in Cellar Dyke.
You did
I did that with a friend. A friend, he was definitely wanting to move. They wanted a bigger house and all the rest of it. But they had their holidays they love every year. They have their, windsurfing kit at the, this guy loves doing. He loves it. He's fantastic, by the way. But they love all their luxuries that they've got as a result of where they are right now. But they just wanted one extra bedroom. But they didn't really need one extra bedroom. And we went through the costs of actually moving, the cost of upscaling, the extra costs and stuff like that when we put it all together. And no, I'm not moving. I like all my luxuries. I like the fact that I've got comfort. And if anything did happen, I would be able to mitigate it. I would be able to survive it. Whereas if I've got that bigger house, I wouldn't be able to go on these holidays that we go on every single year. We'd probably have to end up going to, a local, just over in Craig Tara or something, to go to Haven holidays and over on the West Coast. all these different things. I'd have to just go to Pitlochry. Now, hey, I'm not decrying Pitlochry because I love going to Pitlochry and Blair Athol. They're great trips and weekends and stuff. So I love them as well. But all these things like going overseas, going to Dubai, going to Spain, going to America, going to, you know, Africa, going to Australia, they'll never happen for you.
They're all out the window, yeah.
Yeah, they're out the window. All the dreams you had are not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's true what you say, the risk analysis thing, and my own personal circumstances, things. If I had made that choice at the time, that was pre energy prices and interest, mortgage interest rates and everything, I'd be sitting here with a lot more outlay than what I do. And for what? So I mean, definitely.
And my advice to you at the time is, if you were ever going to do anything with your money, don't buy a house to live in, buy one to rent.
Yeah.
So if you're ever going to do anything with your money, don't buy that bigger house if you don't need it. Remember, it's a need and want.
People want need and want thing, yeah.
Now, you've got to then think to yourself, this has got to be self-critical to yourself. Why do you really want this? Is it to impress people that you don't like?
Yeah, you need to think about
Most of the time it is.
The main driver for me is
it
was a practical thing that got me.
Yeah.
But I don't need it.
First thing I do, if I get anything, my mum says straight away, let's go and have a look at it, like a new car. And I'm like, really? What for? It's like, but that mentality. My mum's still like that. And that's fine. That's okay. But most people are like that as well. Let's go and have a look at your new car. Let's go and have a look at your camper van. I was like, oh, it's just practical. It's a car. It's a car. It's a camper van. Big deal.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I approach everything personally. And I think that's how people that are far more successful than me approach everything as well. Look at Warren Buffett and, you know, Bill Gates. When you see photographs of them, is there a brand in sight? No. They're no daft. They don't fall into that trap of buying all the expensive stuff. They just get what they need and they walk about, you know, just like, well, until the shirt half falls off their backs, I suppose.
Yeah.
You don't need it all. I don't need to impress anybody. Risk management. This is what it's all about. Risk management. Make sure you're covered. Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal about buying your own house, because somebody's mentioned about buying their own house, and surely it's a good idea if you're going to improve and add value. Yeah, if you're going to if your strategy is to buy a rundown house and actually improve it and add value, and then 2 years later to sell it and move to another house and build equity and wealth through that, you're on to a winner. That's probably a really good strategy, because it's all tax-free as you move. If your strategy is to buy a house, add a wee bit of value into it, live in it for 20 years, it's a liability. It's going to cost you money every single month. It doesn't make you any money at all, because all it does is secure your place on the housing ladder to trade to another house, maybe at a higher price point or a lower price point, but both your houses have gone up in the same value. So living in a house and holding a house, thinking it's going up in value, is a false economy, because every other house you're about to buy after it is going up in value. There's no surprise then when I tell you, we've got our final house, and I will sell this, and I'm going into rented accommodation. There is no way I am buying another house and securing and tying up all my capital again in another house I can't get access to. I will go into rented accommodation. I've planned it. I know exactly tax-wise where we are as well. It's a more efficient model in terms of what I want to do. But instantly enough, my children will own the property. We'll move in rent accommodation, and they will get the benefit of the rent I'm paying to them through a limited company I set up on their behalf.
And you've already chose that property, because I'm the manager for you at the moment.
That's the one I bought instead of the Lamborghini Huracan. It makes me a hell of a lot. It makes me a hell of a lot more money than the Lamborghini Huracan. And if you saw my post when I was out in Miami, somebody was getting the Lamborghini Huracan towed away.
I know.
I had to take a video of it. The traffic warden was right over to me and going, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I'm away." I just never engaged with them at all, because obviously they've got guns.
So yeah, so that was risk management. And then the last thing on the list for today was seeking professional advice in any aspect of what you're doing. Like we say, we talked about SASE, I refer back to Kev. Obviously, he is the one, Kev Whelan, he's the expert with that. If you're needing financial advice, speak to a financial advisor. If you need mortgage advice, speak to a mortgage advisor. But Jim, you wanted to talk about, obviously, when it comes to the seeking professional advice section, about this profound insight that you got for Richard when you were away at Neckar. So
there was a couple of lessons I learned out there, and one of the key lessons was Luigi. Now, Luigi runs all the investment strategy for the Virgin Group, like Virgin Galactic. You know, they actually, Richard actually invested in Ring.com in the beginning at 5%. His return was the biggest return ever for an investment outside of Virgin, out of Ring.com, when he invested in it all these years ago. So did, is it Shaq O'Neal? The player, the NBA basketball player.
All right,
Shaq. Yeah. So he invested in Ring.com as well. He's not a dafty. None of the Sharks did, but Shaq did, and so did Richard. So they obviously got a huge payday as well. But Luigi was saying to me at the time, he says, what was it he said to me about investment strategy? I said, look, you know, I know what I paid to get to Necker Island. I know what I outlaid for that, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I felt guilt to a certain degree, because that's not the type of money I usually spend. But Luigi said, he says, it's quite interesting you say that, Jim. He says, you should look at it this way. You've invested that money to get around the right people.
Yeah.
And by getting around the right people, you will elevate yourself to a different sphere and a different thought process. Yes, I completely understand that, and I understand that, and I think that is a good thing. But you've got to make sure you're getting around the right people. Remember, and I talked to him about furus, about the fake gurus. It's like they just want to sell you a course, and they convince you you've got to get around the right people. It's like, well, they're maybe not the right people, because they've not actually built their property empire through their own means. They've built it because they've acquired all that money from you on their courses, and then they put it into property. That's how they've done it. So they're teaching you something that they've not done already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So that's why I thought to myself, you know, it's about getting around the right people and seeing people from different areas. But it really taught me that it doesn't matter what background you're from, the principles are the same. So that's what Leisure told me about that. The next one was Richard. So Richard Branson, we're sitting at the table, we're sitting next to me, we're having a wee chat, and I'm talking about living a lot longer. And he said to me jokingly, he says, well, I'll give you some letters for my great-grandchildren then. And I was like, what's he talking about? Is he going off his head? Because it was completely off subject. And I went, and then it clicked. He says, to give them from when I'm away, you'll still be here. If I'm going to live a lot longer, he says, I'll give them to you, and you can give them to my great-grandchildren and say that I gave them to you. And that was an interesting one. But he did actually say a profound statement at the back of that. He says, Jim, why are you living in tomorrow when you should be living in today?
Okay.
So what did he mean by that? In other words, I'm so focused on doing everything right now to avoid everything later on that I'm actually missing out what's in front of me right now.
It's a good point.
It's a great point. It's an excellent point. And that is from a billionaire. Now, what he didn't know, though, was the full story, and the fact that I don't necessarily do that. This is just my obsession with going way beyond to lift a 150-year-old. It's not really an obsession. And that's why that message was conveyed, maybe not in the correct sense. I just focus on, you know, that's why I don't drink alcohol. That's why I don't touch caffeine. That's why I'm plant-based vegan. I'm the right stuff, by the way. Highly processed foods, vegan food is still bad for you, no matter what it is. So it's still bad for you. And that's why I, you know, don't drink, don't smoke, and that's why I do, I exercise. But I didn't start doing it purposely for that. I started doing it purposely because I wanted to live a lot healthier life, and I wanted to be more clear in the clarity that I had in order to get the future I wanted. That's all.
Yeah.
It was nothing to do with, just, saying, oh, this decision I've got now, will that affect me later on? So no, I'm not doing that. But that's the impression it was conveyed across. Because remember, these are only short. He's not sitting there for a week, sitting talking to me on my own.
No, it's just like small
but we had
conversations.
conversations in between, in terms of that, in terms of what we were doing. We had conversations in between, what we're doing, how we were doing it, and so that hit home as well. But it was right and it was factual.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of proves the point where that, I mean, a lot of people may find that I mean, Jim, you might think you've got quite a good understanding of wealth and how you've got there and things as well, but there's always something to learn for somebody more successful or somebody that's more educated in certain areas of life and industry and things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, there's always someone more successful than you.
Yeah, always.
At what you're doing. So don't kid yourself if you're number one. There's always someone else out there more successful than you. I mean, we're the number one estate agent 4 years running in Scotland. But that's not to say that this year, there might be somebody else more successful. Look at examples about the Olympians, people going for Olympics, marathons, and all the rest of it. But there's, I'll bet you a pound to a penny, there's somebody maybe better than some of the Olympians at what they do.
They're just not on the platform doing it.
Yeah. They're just not on the platform, and they don't actually appear. There's loads of people out. I know there's loads of property investors out there that are far more successful than me at it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. I'm no daft. I don't sit in this wee thing. Look at me, how successful I am. I could care less. It's I'm hoping that this message gets across to people, because this is not about me. This is about helping other people based on my personal experience, based on what we talk about in here, to help themselves. If you give a man, a fish, he'll eat for a day. Let's say a person, because it's politically correct now. If you give a person a fish, they will eat for a day. If you teach a person how to fish, they will eat for life.
Yeah.
Now that's mind-blowing. And there's so many times as a nation, as a world, we tend to keep just giving to people, when in actual fact we're not even teaching them anything. We're not helping them to learn to help themselves. That's the most important thing, to understand what we're trying to achieve here and then working towards that as a natural result. Not actually just to say to everybody every single time, here's a handout, here's a handout, here's a handout, here's a handout. We're not wanting to deny people that genuinely need help as well. And I'm talking about we as in the universal we, everybody in the world. People don't want to deny people that, but we want to help the people that can help themselves.
That's what I was just going to say. There's a balance.
So they don't need to rely on everyone else.
Yeah, there's a balance between the people that need help and are in a position where they need, whether that's financially and through the government and all the rest of it, or people that are able to help themselves and should really take that initiative and obviously seek professional advice to be able to enable them to do that. I think there's a balance between those two different
and
types.
That's when it comes down to what we talked about and what we're saying right here, Richard, about wealth.
Mm-hmm.
To have a sounder understanding of wealth, you need to learn from people that are more successful than you at that. And you need to learn what they do. Do you know, I thought to myself, how many times, Christ almighty, I was at the airport, I didn't think I left Jamie alone. Even when I was at the airport, I went, oh, I never realised you were at the back. Went over and had a chat with him again. It's like once I'd found out who he was and where he was and what he'd achieved and what he had done, that was a completely different story. Zoom. What can I learn off of Jamie as quick as possible? If you've just joined me on TikTok, this is Jamie Siminoff. Jamie Siminoff is the founder of Ring.com, and he sold it for $1 billion to Amazon recently. So that's who I was in about for the last week on Necker Island with Richard Branson and various other people, Italian fashion houses and stuff like that as well. But what can you learn from these people is unbelievable. And as I said before, these stories need to be told so other people can learn as well. The worst thing ever is someone going to their deathbed and everything they've learned goes unspoken and untold. That story, it could have helped someone that's a lot younger than us, or someone that's struggling at this point in time, could have inspired them to actually get some sort of success in their life and some sort of achievement, because that person has told that story and shown them the way.
And giving them that guidance. And it's true what you say, it pays to seek the guidance and assistance from any expert or any individual in a certain field. And much in the same way, like we would say, obviously, you wanted to learn from, what's his name?
We talk about all the time, Richard. I used to say this all the time, and this is what my mentors used to tell me, and I know you're about to say it. If you want to learn to fix a car, you go and get taught by a mechanic. If you want to learn to be a dentist, you go to a dentist and learn how to be a dentist from a dentist. If you want to learn to be a doctor, you go to school, you learn the rest of it, you go out to train as a doctor, same as an accountant, same as anybody that's successful. So if you go to learn how to create wealth and make money, you do not go to a broke person.
No.
And that's generally what we do when we're at the bar with a pint in our hand, talking at the weekend. We'll listen to the people round about us, and we'll listen to what their thoughts are on how the economy is going, how everything else is going, how we should do Brexit, all the rest of it. And you look at their life and you think to yourself, is what you have what I want? And if the answer to that is no, you should not be taking their advice.
Yeah, definitely not.
Well, not necessarily stay away. I'm not saying drop your friends. I'm not saying drop your friends tomorrow. But but as in life, life is a bit like a rocket. Okay? Your rocket starts off at the base and it's all fueled up, it's ready to go. And this is what life is like. Your rocket takes off and gets to a certain altitude. And then what happens is the tanks on the outer fuel tanks that got you to that altitude drop off. Because the outer fuel tanks aren't needed anymore, but they don't necessarily need to go on the journey with you anymore. And it's a bit like life. Some of the people that you meet at some point in time will end up dropping off. They won't be part of your journey later on because they don't want to go where you're going. They want to get so high and want to help you get so high, but they just don't want to go in that next stage. So they will drop off like the tanks on a rocket. And then what will happen is the next booster rocket will kick in to get you even higher. And that's the other people that are with you as well. They'll want to go on your journey. And then at some point, they will disconnect and they will fall off and fall back to earth because they don't want to go where you're going, but they want to go where that point is that you were when they decided to drop off.
Yeah.
Do you know that's a bit like running a business and having employees?
Yeah. That's what I think
it is, isn't it?
As you say it, that's what I think about in my head.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not everybody's going to get what you want to do. They don't want to do, even though they say it, it comes out their mouth and I want to be this and I want to achieve that and I want to achieve this. And then you think, okay, I know a plan how to get there, and you put that in place for them. And then the next minute they go, I'm quitting and I'm going somewhere else because I see, the grass is greener. And you're like, wait a minute, I just put everything in place. I put everything in place in order to help you get to that point. You told me you wanted.
Yeah.
They didn't really want it. They just thought it'd be nice to have. It wasn't a burning desire within them. They just thought it'd be nice to have. That's all. When it becomes a burning desire, when it becomes a need rather than a want, you will do everything within your power to achieve it.
Yeah. Good. I think that's a good place to leave it today, Jim.
Absolutely.
And that was our tips on planning a better financial future, and obviously a lot of good insights from your trip there, Jim, and how your experience, the effect it had on you, and I hope everybody's kind of interacted quite well with that and receptive to the feedback that you've given for a lot of very successful people.
Yeah, bloody hell.
So
I want to go next year.
Well, we'll leave that there today. We will be back next Monday, 12:30 as usual for the Wealth Creation Show. And thanks for joining in. Jim, you've got people on TikTok there. We've got Gary and Sean and things in the comments here. Thanks, guys, for commenting and jumping in. And until next week, I'll see you all later. Bye, Jim.
Bye for now, folks.